and then for any that you need to get this. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys the answers, and then any that we need to do work on, we can look at those. So the first four on the first page, we're just finding the slope, counting your rise over run. Or I don't know if those will help because they're wet. So number 1 should have been 1/2. Count up and over 2, or you could have found different points. But as long as you found 2 points and counted that, that should have simplified to 1/2 regardless. So yeah, do the same thing right on a piece of paper. And then for number 2, the slope was 0. So this is some pulls off the line. Your slope is going to be 0. Number 3 should have been -3. Make sure you're simplifying. And then number 4 was 3/4. Questions on those 4? Make sure you're putting m equals, that you're simplifying, putting the negatives when it is negative. Now, the slopes for the rest are up here, but I'm going to show the work you have to do. For number 5, we should have been using our slope formula, the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this would be 5 minus a -4. Make sure you're putting both over -8 minus 10. So if I were to subtract this, this would give me 9 over -18, which would simplify to -1/2. Joshua, computer work, please. Okay. For number 6, same thing. So we have -1 minus a -3 over 16 minus a -4. And then when we subtract, or in this case add, -1 plus 3 would give us 2. 16 plus 4 would give us 20, which would simplify to 1/10. Questions on either of those? In 7 and 8, the slope-intercept form was already there. You just have to figure out what the slope was. So -1/4 and 1/3. For 9 and 10, you had to solve this by either subtracting 5x or adding y. It does not matter. So if we subtracted 5x, we then have to get y by itself by dividing everything by -1. But then that doesn't answer our question. We have to still state what the slope is, which is 5. Okay. Same thing with 10. Subtract x on both sides. Divide everything by -3. So that we get y equals, the negatives cancel, this is really 1x, so this becomes 1/3 x minus 4, so that our slope is 1/3. Questions on that? Moving on to the next page. So these, you had to write the equations of these. So for the first 2, they gave you the graph. You had to find your slope, find the y-intercept, and write that in y equals mx plus b. The y-intercept was actually where the arrow ends. So this was y equals negative 1x or negative x plus 5. Either of these was fine. For 17, similarly, find the y-intercept which says at 0, count your slope, and then you would have got y equals 3x or y equals 3x plus 0, either or. 13 and 14, it gave you your slope and y-intercept, so similar to this, you just had to write it in slope-intercept form. So y equals 4x minus 4, and y equals negative 2/3 x plus 3. Questions on those before we get into the work ones? So for 15, one of these you had to use your point slope. You could have done that for both or done one or one. So I'll do one of each. Your slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. This would be x, y, and this is m. So I would put this in as negative 2 equals my slope of 1. My x is 2, and then b is still just b. And then I would multiply the 1 and 2 and get rid of, sorry, I have too many equals in there. Get rid of this 2 by subtracting. So that b is negative 4. And then once I have that, I would write that in the equation. Y equals x minus 4 or y equals 1x minus 4. Either one. Questions on that one? Then if you use slope-intercept for this, you have to use point slope for this one, which is your y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. If you forget that, it is over there on the board in pink. Feel free to go up there and look at it. So if I'm using this one, this would be x1, y1, and this is m. Where, as I start to put this in, it would be y minus a negative 2 equals negative 3/5 times x minus 5. So it should look something like this, where you have that double negative. You need to change that double negative to a plus. And I can distribute at the same time. So this would become a positive, and the 5s would cancel. Then I can get rid of the 2 by subtracting. So if you don't make this 2 sets of negatives, yes, but I don't have their, so I don't want to fixing it on that. So I'll just leave them like that. Because I'm going to grade those, but I haven't graded them yet, so I don't want to fix them. Oh, okay. So after you subtract that to your root, you should get this equation. Questions on that one? So if you don't change the negative, the minus or the negative minus to a plus, it kind of messes up the rest of your work, so be careful there. For 17 and 18, you had to find the slope first. So this would be negative 5 minus 3 over 3 over 5 minus 3. Which would simplify to negative 4. Miss Shepherd, I check phones. And then we could use either of these points and either of these methods. Do we want to see slope-intercept or point-slope again? This method or this method? The slope-intercept. Okay, so I'm just going to choose this first point because the numbers are positive. So that would be 3 equals our slope, negative 4, times x, which is 3, plus b. Multiply these two. And then get rid of 12 by adding. But once I get that b, I have to put it back in my y equals mx plus b so that I get this equation. Y equals negative 4x plus 15. Questions on that? The last one, start off the same way. Where we're finding the slope. 5 minus a negative 1 over 0 minus a negative 4. And then subtract, or in this case add. So this would be 5 plus 1, so 6. 0 plus 4, or 4, which simplifies to 3 over 2. Normally you would do either this work or the point slope work, but this one gives you the y-intercept. Because it gave you the y-intercept, you don't need to solve for it. You still can, but you don't have to. And I can go straight into the equation. Y equals 3 over 2x plus 5. Questions on that? The slope page, all the problems were worth 1 point. All of these were worth 1 point, except for these last two, they were worth 2. On to the next. So the graphs I have up here. So you should have started at your y-intercept for 19, that was 3. And then it's positive, so we want to go up, but I can't go up 5, but I can go down 5 and left 2. And then make sure you have arrows. 20, similarly, start at negative 1. I can go up 1 to the left 4, but make sure I'm doing that on both sides. And draw arrows. 21 should have been just a horizontal line at 1 on the y-axis. And then 22 started at positive 5, and we could go down 7 to the right 4 and draw arrows. Questions on any of those? The last page. So for this one, you have to put 0 in, so not how we just solved it earlier, but put 0 in for one of the variables. So let's say I put it in for x first. This is going to become 0, so I would just write what's left. And divide both sides by 2. Negative 2. And then you're going to write them as an ordered pair. 0, negative 12. Then do the same thing for the other term. Put 0 in for y. And solve for x. This middle one would be 0. Then I have 6x equals 24. Get rid of 6. And write that as an ordered pair. 4, 0. Questions on that one? So do you have a question? 24, you could start this one by plotting those points, 0, -1, and 5, 0. But then we need to write the equation of this line. So we need to count this slope. And then once you have that slope and your y-intercept, write your equation. Y equals 1/5 x minus 1. So we need that equation to answer that problem. The last two, you just had to find the x and y-intercepts and write them as ordered pairs. So that was at 1, 0 for the x-intercept and 0, -1 for the y-intercept. So make sure you write those, not just plot those points. And then for the x, it was at 5, 0, and the y was at 0, 2. Questions on any of that? Or questions in general? I'm going to explain the project if you so choose to do that in a second. Okay, let me get it first. Okay, so this project is different than the last one because you'll be given a set of ordered pairs. You're going to choose 6 of those sets, and then you're going to find the slope of those 6 sets of ordered pairs. Determine whether it's positive, negative, 0, undefined. Then on this graph paper, you're going to graph those ordered pairs, draw lines through them, find the y-intercept of said lines, and use your slope to plot more points to find the equation of those lines. After you find the equation, then you're going to find the x-intercepts of those lines. And then the very last thing is you're going to create a standard equation, so one that looks like this, with one of your x-intercepts and one of your y-intercepts. If you need me to re-explain that again, I can do that. Does anyone want to do the project instead of the test? Okay. Alright. Are there any other last minute questions before we start the test? Okay. Those working on the project can use your notes. Everyone taking the test, you cannot use your notes. So go ahead and clear off your desks.